We're ready.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the November 15th, 2023 meeting of the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Georgette, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Director Lee? Here. Director Ortiz? Here. Director Miller?
Here.
Director Jakes?
Here.
Chairman Barclay?
Here.
Director Jakes, we do have a quorum.
Our first order of business is the approval of the committee minutes of October 13th, 2023. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ortiz and seconded by Director Miller that we approve the committee minutes of October 13th, 2023. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Lee? Yes. Director Miller?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ortiz? The motion to approve the minutes passes.
Our next order of business is the finance report. Jeremy Fine.
Good afternoon. I'm Jeremy Fine, your Chief Financial Officer. And I'll walk through the results for September and year-to-date numbers. On the next slide, you see the Forest Park Blue Line project. Reduced fare subsidy continues to come in as expected, as does non-fare box totals. So for the month, again, essentially flat, slightly down to budgeted expectations by about $400,000. On a year-to-date basis, on the next slide, you see fare and pass totals coming in almost $10 million better than expected. You see reduced fare subsidy coming in as expected, and non-fare box totals coming in about $3.6 million better than budgeted expectations. So overall, on a year-to-date basis, we see about $13.4 million of positive variance to budget. On the next slide, you see the expenses for the month of September. Next slide, please. So we see labor coming in about $3 million to the positive. This has been reducing over the course of the year as our hiring efforts continue to ramp up. Materials are essentially flat to budget. Fuel and power continue to be positive performers for us. Injuries and damages coming in as expected. And the security services, as we've increased our security throughout the system, that is coming in negative to budget by about $3 million. Other expenses continue to be positive at about $7.6 million. So overall for the month of September, we're about $9.4 million favorable. On the next slide, you see year-to-date numbers. You see, again, positive variance on labor, essentially flat, but slightly down on materials. Fuel and power, strong performers. Security services is negative variance to budget, and other expenses are positive by about $27 million, which leaves us on a year-to-date basis about $85 million to the positive with regard to our expenses. On the next slide, you see our public funding. On the next slide, you see this for the month collections. We see sales tax and PTF continuing to be positive, but that is being offset to some degree by the negative drag from RET. As interest rates have increased, we continue to see a dampening effect on the number of sales in the city. So that is coming in negative to budget. But overall for the month, we're about $800,000 to the positive. On the next slide, you see year-to-date numbers. And again, dropping to the bottom line, we're about $2.3 million to the positive on a year-to-date basis across the sales tax, PTF, RET, and PTF on RET line items. On the next slide, you see our funding relief draws. In the next slide, you can see that we're not drawing down any for the month. As you may recall, last month we drew down more in anticipation of a potential shutdown of the federal government. That luckily did not happen, but we did have those quote unquote kind of reserves of excess draws last month that we're using for this month. So we're using about 18 million of the 24 million that we drew last month, and we'll use the balance of it to offset a portion of the draw for next month. To date, we've drawn down about 52.5% of the total allocation, which means that we have a little over $1 billion remaining. On the next slide, you see our commodities across, and then on the next slide, you see the three commodities that we purchased, fuel, power, and natural gas. We're where we need to be across all three commodities for the next year and a half or so. We'll continue to look for selective opportunities to buy each of these commodities as prices avail themselves. But again, this strategy has worked very well for us to be able to lock in at low prices when market conditions allow. So I'm glad to answer any questions with regard to September results or year to date.
Jeremy, with the possible extension that's happening with Congress now, not knowing what's gonna happen in the Senate. Are you anticipating having to draw more? Or are you gonna use the 24, the balance of the 24 to just kind of wait for January to see what's gonna happen?
Correct. I think that there is some positive momentum coming out of the House. That it doesn't look like there'll be, a shutdown here in the near term. We'll continue to obviously very closely watch what's happening in DC so that, come the new year, we'll continue to see whether or not we need to make these advanced draws. Again, I think the strategies worked well for us. Obviously, we didn't have to use it per se because of a shutdown. But again, potentially drawing down additional funds, if there does look like there's an impasse in Washington.
Well, let me just say that I want to commend you and your team for being fiscally responsible with the federal relief dollars. So I want that to go on record. Okay, I have no further questions.
Okay. Director Lee, any questions? Director Miller, any questions?
No question.
Chairman Barclay, any questions?
Yes, Mr. Fine, during our budget hearing, there was a question from the public regarding the provision of fair media to victims of domestic abuse and sexual assault. Can you explain the program and how it reaches out to those individuals?
Sure. We continue to work as we have in the past with various, city, county, state agencies for different needs of the community at large. And again, I think that this is one example of our continued kind of outreach to groups that need continued assistance to access the system. And again, I think it's just one of many things that we have done in the past, and we'll continue to look to partner with other community groups, other agencies of government to look for opportunities to continue to deliver service to vulnerable populations, as they need them.
Now, I understand that this is legislated by the state, and PACE and Metro also are participating. Am I correct?
That's correct.
All right. Thank you.
No other questions?
Director Ortiz?
No other questions.
You ready?
The chair recognizes Director Ortiz.
Thank you for the recognition. I move that the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget meeting recess until called to order by the committee chair, Director Jakes, for the purpose of the regular Transit Board meeting to address the reappointment of Director Nima Jah.
Director Miller?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget meeting recess until called to order by our committee chair, Director Jakes, for the purposes of the regular Transit Board meeting to address the reappointment of Director Nima Jah. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes,
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
the yeas have it, and the meeting will stand in recess until called back to order by me. I don't want to talk about myself in the third person, by Director Jakes. If I had your gavel, all right. Well, so we're in recess.
Thank you.
Chairman Barclay?
Good afternoon. I would like to
Director Ortiz? Just calling the roll.
Yes, here.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
yes.
Director Miller? Director Lee.
Mr. Chairman.
The chair recognizes Director Ortiz.
Thank you for the recognition, Chairman. I move that the agenda for today's meeting be amended that the board matters, which is agenda item number 6, be moved to agenda item number 2.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that the agenda be amended for today's meeting and that board matters be moved up to agenda item number 2. We'll take the roll call vote. Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
I move that we approve the ordinance fixing the salary of Nima Jha as a member of the Chicago Transit Board.
Second.
That matter is under board matters. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the ordinance fixing the salary of Nima Jha as a member of the Chicago Transit Board. I'll take the roll call vote. Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes. Chairman Barclay, I move that we recess the Chicago Transit Board regular meeting until called to order by the chair following the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Director Ortiz and Director Miller that the regular meeting of the Chicago Transit Board be held in recess until after the meeting on the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. We'll take the roll call vote. Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
The yeas have it. Chairman Barclay?
It appears the ayes have it and the meeting stands in recess until the conclusion of the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget meeting.
I would like to go and get Director Jha, if that's okay.
So how's everybody? Okay, all right. Like it's a sunny day, put a smile on our face. We're gonna appreciate this in January.
Second that one.
All right. Welcome back.
Chairman, I'm turning the meeting back over to you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget will come to order. Time of recess has expired.
Director Jakes, you can proceed to agenda item number 3.
Our next order,
Agenda item number 4.
thank you. Our next order of business is an ordinance amending the fiscal years 2023 through 2027 capital improvement program and authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with Cook County through its Department of Transportation and Highways for a bus priority corridor planning study. Michelle Curran and Jeremy Fine.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Michelle Curran, Deputy CFO and Comptroller. I'm here today to present a proposed amendment to the 2023 to 2027 Capital Improvement Program or CIP. The board previously approved the amended $4.16 billion CIP. We're now proposing a final closing amendment. First, the amendment will incorporate an award from Cook County in the amount of $575,000 for the Invest in Cook grant program to complete the bus priority corridor study. In addition to amending the CIP for this project, the proposed ordinance also authorizes CTA to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with Cook County for the funding. Second, CMAP has awarded CTA 5303 Unified Work Program funds in the amount of $838,226 to develop the capital program. Third, the Department of Homeland Security has awarded CTA $13.1 million of fiscal year 2023 Transit Security Grant Program funds.
Michelle, I'm sorry, can I pause for a minute? I just saw on the chat where our ASL interpreter said that the sound was bad. Is it the sound from their microphone? It's better now? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Finally, the closing amendment defers bond funds from 2023 to 2024 based on timing of project needs. The net increase in funding due to this amendment is $8 million, bringing the final 2023 to 2027 CIP to 4.17 billion. Be happy to answer any questions.
Oh, I enjoy when we all shake hands as agencies, and with the city, the state, the county. So I have no questions.
Okay, we will take questions from the rest of the board. Director Lee,
No questions, thank you.
Director Miller,
No question.
Chairman Barclay,
No question.
Director Ortiz,
No questions. Thank you.
Director Ja.
Questions.
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Miller and seconded by Director Ortiz that this ordinance be placed on the omnibus. We'll take the roll call vote. Director Lee,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Chairman Barclay,
Yes.
Director Jakes,
Yes.
Director Ortiz,
Yes.
Director Ja.
Yes.
Director Jakes, we may now proceed to agenda items number 5 and 6.
Agenda item 5 and 6 is review of an ordinance adopting a budget for calendar year 2024 and financial plan for calendar years 2025 and 2026, and approving the fiscal years 2024 through 2028 capital improvement program, and authorizing the filing and execution of grant cooperative agreements and amendments and related materials. Jeremy Fine and Michelle Curran. Say that 20 times.
Thank you. I'm Jeremy Fine, Chief Financial Officer, and I'm joined by Michelle Curran, Deputy Chief Financial Officer, to walk through the 2024 budget and the 5-year CIP program. The 24 budget is a $2 billion, $1.996 billion budget. The capital improvement program for the next 5 years is a $3.6 billion program. It's important to highlight that this budget does not include any fare increase, and it also allows for service to be restored to 2019 pre-pandemic levels. And again, we continue on a very quick pattern to continue to get people hired, trained, and online so that we can continue to deliver that service for our customers. The ridership growth rate is assumed to be about 10%, 9.9% over the 2023 budget. And this means that this is a retention rate of about 63.4% of 2019 levels. This budget for 2024 requires federal relief funds of about $473 million based on our projections. And that this means that there'll be a little under $500 million, about $481 million projected of the original 2.2 to carry over into 2025. And we'll talk about that. Those funds will be exhausted in 25. There'll be a small residual gap of about $50 million that we'll need to close in 25. And then which also sets the stage for the gap to be addressed for the 2026 budget as well. Some of the highlights of this budget are that we continue to focus on delivering reliable and consistent service to our customers. Again, really ramping up those HR efforts to continue to get operators online and trained up and out there on the front line so that they can continue to deliver that service. We're also continuing to invest in safety and security measures, both on the operating side through additional security personnel, as well as on the capital side with investments in lighting, cameras, and the like, to continue to make the system as safe to use as possible. With regard to our customer experience, we continue to deliver, improvements, whether it be working with CDOT on bus, priority lanes, whether it be continuing advancement of the ASAP program, the All Stations Accessibility Program, the Forest Park rebuild, the rollout of the zero emission fleet, and many, many more things. But again, we're really focused on continuing to try to better the customer experience overall. And part of the way that we're doing that is through digital transformation and really looking at improving the tools, whether it be bus tracker, train tracker, or the like, new chatbot services, being more interactive and being more real-time information to our customers, again, is a critical component as we move forward and what we're investing in the 24 budget. Also, with regard to investments, we continue to invest in our employees. They're really the tip of the spear here with regard to ensuring that service is out there, the quality service that we want to have out the door and on the streets. And again, we've done a great job of getting more employees in the door, but also a large portion of that is also looking to retain the great talent that we already have here at CTA. And then we look to expand some of the fare products that Chairman Barkley had referred to during the FAB report. But we'll continue to look for other opportunities to partner with our fellow service boards as well as agencies around the area, around the state, to continue to deliver service. Because again, we want to make sure that the system is open, available, and accessible for all people that we serve in the service area. So that is a quick overview of the budget. On the next page, you see some highlights with regard to the forecast. You see that the 2023 forecast, as of today, we estimate that there'll be a $75 million favorability to the budget. This breaks down to about $34 million better than budget with regard to our revenues. We see Farebox continuing to rebound as ridership continues to rebound. We also see investment income as interest rates have gone up, continue to come back. And then we see public forecasting for our public funding of sales tax continuing to have strong support. And that is being offset, though, to some degree with regard to the real estate transfer tax, and that declining because of higher interest rates and the depressing effect that has on real estate sales. With regard to our expenses, we'll talk more about this in a moment, but we've done a very good job of controlling our expenses without impacting service in frontline operations. Our labor expense is about $46 million favorable due to the vacancies that we have. But again, we're moving full steam ahead with regard to filling those vacancies. Fuel, we continue to have a very strategic approach to locking in fuel at advantageous times. That's allowed us to lock in quite a bit of savings for the year. And then other expenses continue to be favorable, as we've talked about in the FAB report with regard to our contractual services. These positive effects are being offset by some of the security services that we continue to improve on throughout the system. And that has a negative drag overall. But for the year, we're projecting that we'll end up with expenses about $41 million below budget. On the next page, you see the 2024 operating budget. And you see here that operating revenue is estimated to be about $1.5 billion, or about 6% higher than where we were for the 23 budget. This is because we continue to see ridership rebounding and increasing farebox revenues, as well as some assumed growth with regard to the sales tax that we collect. And again, we're estimating that we'll use about $472 million to close the budget gap from federal emergency relief funds. The operating expenses are about $2 billion, $1.996 billion. This is about 9% higher than the 23 budget. And this is driven by higher labor costs with regard to contractual wage increases, as well as pension increases and healthcare cost increases. Materials have increased because of inflation, and you see that reflected here. Security services, as we've increased the security budget, we've adjusted that for the 24 budget, so we shouldn't see that negative variance on a month-to-month basis. And then contractual services, we see an increase here again based on inflationary impacts across that line item. And then as we've continued to use the TIFIA loan program, the federal TIFIA loan program, and as those debt service payments come online, you see an increase with regard to our debt service costs for the year of 2024. On the next page, you see federal funding requirements. You see here highlighted in pink on the left side of the two bar chart groupings. That is the federal emergency relief funding. And we're again assuming that we use about $473 million in 2024, about $481 million in 2025, which leaves us in the red there with regard to about $50 million gap for 2025. That gap, again, which is known as the fiscal cliff in the transit world, is shown to be about $577 million for 2026. One of the key things that we talk about with the state legislature when we're talking about the, on the next slide, please, when we talk about the need to close the fiscal cliff and additional revenues that could be used to close that, is what we have done proactively with regard to our own expenses. And it's important to note in a very good feather in our cap with regard to the effective measures that we've taken to date over the last 8 years. Since 2015, we've accumulated over $1 billion of cumulative savings, cost savings, and non-fare box revenue growth without us impairing any of the service or safety positions throughout the organization. This really has led us to be one of the, if not the most efficient cost operators in the industry. And it also has led us to have an administrative cost expense load that's corporate in levels. And what I mean by that is that our administrative expenses are in the neighborhood of 8.5% or less, which is what you see usually in corporate type of environments and well below what you see within some of our peer group. Some of the belt tightening measures have been on, again, labor, but again, focused on areas that do not impact service or safety. Fuel and power, we've talked about with regard to locking in at favorable prices. Capital investments is continued investments in our rolling stock that have allowed us to bend the cost curve with regard to maintenance. And then non-fare box revenues, we were really doing some great things pre-pandemic, and we're starting to see some rebounding of these revenue streams, but we really built kind of best in class with regard to advertising, concession, parking, and also the very innovative ground transportation tax funds that we received at one point with regard to non-fare box revenue opportunities. So we'll continue to look at these opportunities as we move forward. But again, I think that as we have those conversations with the state, we're in a very strong position with regard to asking for more revenues because of the fact that we've been so proactive with regard to our expense controls and deriving new revenues that are innovative, that puts us in a very good position. With regard to our ridership, again, this is on the next page. We see, the ridership numbers. And one of the things to really highlight here is right in the middle of the graph. You see in 2022 that those ridership numbers grew by 24%. Again, substantial growth in the system. That's been followed this year by a growth pattern of over 12%. For the next few years, we're projecting, anywhere between 4.5% and almost 6% growth rate. And again, we continue to see people coming back to the system as we continue to make investments in the system, continue to get, the service out there, continue to get the safety measures, online. Again, we continue to see people coming back to the system and the reliance on CTA due to our continued investment and continued support of the system and our customers. One of the things that we've highlighted here too is that CTA is consistently now surpassing 1 million rides a day, particularly Tuesday through Thursday, as we've gone into the fall here. So it's in early winter. So it's, again, really good numbers coming back to the system. We continue to see continued growth moving forward. And again, we have not topped out with regard to our ridership. There's still a lot of growth opportunity here, and we continue to tap into that as we move forward. That concludes the operating portion, and Michelle now flip to the 2024 through 2028 capital improvement program.
Thank you, Jeremy. If you can advance 2 slides, I think. Thank you. Good afternoon again, Michelle Curran, Deputy CFO and Comptroller. So the first slide is an overview. The 2024 through 2028 Capital Improvement Program is a $3.61 billion program that funds major projects, including the Red Line Extension, the All Stations Accessibility Program, conversion to an electric bus fleet, and bus and rail fleet modernization. The funding sources for the CIP include federal funds, state pay-go funds from motor fuel taxes, and CTA bonds. We'll also continue to seek additional FTA grant discretionary grant funding awards as they become available, particularly to accelerate the ASAP and bus electrification programs. Next slide, please. Next several slides include some of the details around specific projects in the CIP. First is the Red Line Extension to the south, which is estimated to cost $3.6 billion. The Red Line Extension would extend the rail line 5.6 miles from the 95th Street Terminal to 130th Street, including 4 new stations, park and ride facilities, and a storage yard and maintenance facility. We're currently in the project engineering phase of the new federal New Starts funding program and expect the full funding grant agreement to be awarded in late 2024. The CIP funds $700 million of the project funding until all funding is secured when the FFGA is executed. The project continues to move forward with community engagement, agency coordination, and technical analysis. Property acquisition is moving forward, and the Red Line Extension Transit Supportive Development Plan was approved by the city's Plan Commission earlier this year. In addition, 3 qualified contracting teams are expected to submit design build proposals. Next slide, please. The All Stations Accessibility Program, or ASAP, is a comprehensive 20-year program to make all stations vertically accessible. 103 of CTA's 145 stations, or 70%, are already accessible. Currently, CTA has funding identified for 14 of the remaining 42 stations. Phase 1 of the plan, which is fully funded, includes 9 stations to be made fully accessible, including the 4 Red Line stations as part of Red Purple modernization, the Austin Green Line station, California, Montrose, and Racine stations on the Blue Line, and the State and Lake Elevated Station. In addition, funding has been identified for 5 stations included in Phase 2, which are Irving Park, Belmont, and Pulaski on the Blue Line, and Oak Park and Ridgeland on the Green Line. With the completion of these additional stations, the rail system will be 81% accessible. The program also includes upgrades or replacements to existing elevators. Next slide, please. The CIP includes funding of $345 million for the conversion to electric buses. This will complete the funding need to modernize the Chicago Avenue garage for e-buses and begin funding for upgrades to the 103rd Street garage. It also funds $188 million towards the next e-bus purchase and chargers. And as always, CTA continues to seek additional discretionary grant funds for bus garage improvements for e-buses and the purchase of additional e-buses. Excuse me. Next slide, please. The CIP also invests in the bus and rail fleet modernization. Bus improvements include purchasing the remaining new standard buses, provide funding for new e-buses to replace the 4000 series buses, and perform overhauls on existing buses. On the rail side, we funded the purchase of new 7000 series rail cars and overhaul work for the existing 5000, 3200, and 2600 rail cars. We're also investing in utility vehicles and equipment to help maintain the rail cars. This concludes our presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Michelle and Jeremy, can you go back one to the accessibility? No, go back another one, I'm sorry. So currently 103 of the 145. This will bring accessibility stations to 81%. Understand about, lack of money, waiting for money. But why can't it be done that it's 100%?
That's what we're working towards. This is just the first phase is fully funded, where we've made a lot of progress on funding for Phase 2. We also have to, manage construction. It can't all happen overnight. It's a 20-year plan to bring the
rail system into full accessibility.
A 20-year plan?
Yes, it was released in 2018.
Okay.
Can you tell us how it's determined which station goes first in terms of the remaining stations, and whether or not the disabled community has a say-so in that?
We do work with the community. It's also depending on needs, other construction work that's coming up, the difficulty and design that is needed in order to construct the elevators and reconstruct the station. But we do take into account the disability community concerns, and we're actually in the process of updating the 20-year plan, which I believe will be released sometime next year. Thanks, Bill.
Good afternoon, Bill Mooney, your Chief Infrastructure Officer. So I just would add to what Michelle talked about. We did work very closely with our advocacy groups, the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities, as well as Access Living, our support board, ADA Accessibility Board with CTA, and not only on the original plan, but also on the refresh. So the plan was never envisioned to be a stale plan. It was done in 2018. It was agnostic to funding sources. It just said, all things being equal, what is the best way to improve our overall system and move it forward? Now that we do have funding sources, the federal government, we started to look at some of those competitiveness, those granting opportunities, as well as feedback we've had as we brought stations online. So initially we were trying to fill holes where we've actually got a lot of feedback from the advocacy community saying, we'd actually rather you continue down the line and keep filling in, because it's easier for us to know, that we're fully accessible to this point versus jumping around a bunch of stations. And so we've kind of refreshed the plan. We again been working with our partners on that, and we're looking to get that plan out this upcoming year on its anniversary again. So really, we're advancing as money becomes available. See a lot of that. We've made more progress on this program since President Carter's vision initially with this plan in 2018 in the last 2 years. And a great credit to both the state and their funding of it, as well as the federal program.
That, Jeremy, you talk about the $50 million gap. I think that's from the president's report. He's been talking about these funds are needed. Have we identified where that's coming from? And then secondly, on the three commodities, power, we didn't have anything for 25. The reason for that, the other two is into 26, when the power was not.
Sure. With regard to the gaps, again, our larger legislative approach and initiatives are focused on that fiscal cliff that you mentioned. And I think that what you've seen in both the RTA Transit as the Answer plan, as well as CMAP's part plan, is that there's been several different identified potential revenue stream opportunities, and they don't but I think that what we have seen is identified in both plans is the sales tax that could be increased by both the base and the rate. The second big bucket of opportunity is with regard to kind of a sundry list of state revenues, whether those be PTF, whether they be RET, or any other source of funding that the state has at its disposal. And then the third big bucket, which is identified, is one of congestion pricing. And I think that the PART plan in particular, potentially identifies that as a source for capital, just because of the period of time that would be needed to effectuate, congestion pricing is a little bit longer than what we have with regard to the fiscal cliff that we are facing. One additional source that's identified in the RTA plan, but not necessarily highlighted the same way in the PART plan, is the potential source of federal funds. Federal funds were provided to the large legacy transit agencies across the country in the pre-Reagan era. That has largely gone away, other than, obviously with the federal emergency relief funding. But again, I think that those are, and again, we're agnostic as to the source. But those are some potential identified revenue streams in both the RTA plan and the CMAP plans that could be tapped into to help close that 25 potential shortfall, and most assuredly would need to be used to close the 26 projected gap that's closer to 600 million and 577 million. So those are the potential, revenue streams and how we would potentially identify, and effectuate those different ideas to close those future budget gaps. I think that one of the, with regard to power, we are looking at and moving on a RFP for power that we will, once we effectuate that, we'll be able to look at locking in power for 25 and beyond. We do have a little bit of time, because again, we've locked in for 24 at this point, but we are looking and actively working to look at what we can do to effectuate a new power contract, and also taking into consideration of the changes in that industry to ensure that we are, being environmentally conscious with regard to the purchases as we move forward as well.
Thank you.
Other questions? Director Lee?
Sure, just going back to accessibility, love that we have the ASAP plan, obviously. Love that we're moving towards 81%, great. Not 100%, as we all know, right? That's not enough. I would encourage, I guess, us as an agency to be more transparent in that, in how we're refreshing and how we're involving community partners, et cetera, just to be able to share that more openly. And also would love to hear you all how we're pushing for more opportunities to be more aggressive than the 81% next year.
Absolutely. We plan as we bring kind of forward the next plan towards the ADA advisory committee, and certainly yourself, Director Lee, in conversation, talk a little bit about what's been refreshed from the last time, as many of us were participants, and try to share that information. And I would note that we are not sitting on our heels in this. So when the federal program came out there, we went big, right? We went after 3 stations, $118 million in the program for the first time ever. Our opinion was we should ask for everything we think we can get, and you only get 2, we'll take 2, right? So that was a 2-year allotment of federal funding, that first award. And so we are expecting that again this year, next period, and we're going to go big again. So
That we're going big, all right.
Director Ortiz?
Yeah, I think on that note, the only thing that I would add, if we can also map our capital improvements throughout, I think that would be really helpful. Show a lot of where we're investing and why and how. So I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
Director Ja?
No question, but +1 to Michelle.
Director Jakes? Oh, I'm sorry. Chairman Barclay?
Just one other point. First, I want to compliment you guys on the belt tightening that you've done over the years. Just being good stewards with public resources. A lot of times that does not play out public, but the cost savings and things that you've done by just the fuel, buying it at the right time, at the most opportune time, those kinds of things, I know have saved the agency a lot of money. And I just want to compliment you and your team for being forward thinking and looking beyond that. One of the other things that I saw in the budget was an increased funding for dealing with our social service issues. And I'm hoping that the president will address some of that as well in terms of the homelessness problems that we have on the system. I mean, we talk about customer experience and people complain all the time about some of the challenges that just trying to get from point A to point B, and some of the disturbances by people, are homeless and find shelter in CTA. But I'm pleased to see that you've increased the amount of funding for that as well. And so I'm appreciative of that. I'm hoping that the president will address that issue and some of the difficult challenges that we face as an agency is dealing with the social service issue. I know we're in the transportation business, but our circumstances dictate that we sometimes have to find other creative ways to make our customers have a positive experience. So I'm glad you added more money to that.
That's increased to 2.5 million as you identified. So that's a commitment to continuing to improve our services to customers at large, and also to address some of the issues that frankly, don't need to be addressed, directly with, security, say, but need to be addressed with, social services.
Yes, thank you.
May I now,
Jakes, there are no further questions.
may I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
Second.
It's been moved by Director Miller and seconded by Director Ortiz that this item be placed on the omnibus. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ja? Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
The motion passes. Director Jakes, you may now proceed to agenda item number 7.
Agenda item 7 is review of an ordinance authorizing the acquisition of real property located at 5628 West Roosevelt Road, Chicago, Illinois. Bill Mooney and Bill, you are in my thoughts.
Thank you, Director. I truly appreciate it. Good afternoon. Bill Mooney, your Chief Infrastructure Officer again. Real estate staff recommends approval of an ordinance authorizing the acquisition of real property located at 5628 West Roosevelt Road. CTA is the owner of a vacant lot located within a multi-tenant retail center at 5628 West Roosevelt Road, which is the site of the future bus terminal, but does not have sufficient land area to fully accommodate our current design standards. There is an adjacent parcel undeveloped vacant land owned by Roosevelt and Central LLC, which is comprised of approximately 10,803 square feet. The owner is unable to use the property and now wishes to dispose of it, and CTA has agreed to acquire the property for $1. Be happy to take any questions.
I have no questions, Bill.
Director Ja?
No questions. Thank you.
Director Ortiz?
Thank you.
Chairman Barclay?
Just briefly, this is a good example, President Carter, of what I've discussed with you about taking advantage of utilized resources such as vacant land that is there that we can help to improve the community. We can help to improve the experience for our workers, as well as just to improve the customer experience for our customers as well. And so to identify vacant parcels like this that are adjacent to our system, take advantage of that. And I'm glad we're able to do that. Thank you.
Director Miller?
No question.
Director Lee?
No questions.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
So just one quick, Bill, has anyone talked to you about the property on 95th that is immediately west of the hub where the McDonald's used to be?
Yeah, I'm aware of the property there, so yeah.
Okay, has anyone talked to, looked at that property as possibly acquiring that property?
So I would say that we are in partnership right now with Department of Planning and Development on a corridor study for that corridor entirely. So we do own some land there that was from the 95th Station renovation project there on the east side of the terminal that we've been working with planning on kind of the old corridor. So they really see us as the center of that anchor community, Chicago State, University to the east, you've got Trinity United to the west. And so we fill in kind of the middle there. And so the Department of Planning and Development, they had a community meeting actually last Tuesday where they were taking in input from the community about what they'd like to see in the corridor, how is best used and what the level of land use is there. That's a really high profile commercial corner. And so I think our presence there is very valuable to supporting development in that corner. And we're working with the Department of Planning and Development on all the use there and seeing where we fit in the role there.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, one of the things that had come up was possible use for parking for our employees. So I know we're leasing space in different spots at 95th Street. So, if you could at least consider that as something that you might want to take a look at, additional parking for our employees who are at the 95th Street.
Understood, Chairman. We've heard your comments and then we've shared that with the Department of Planning and Development where that best fits kind of in relationship to everything. So.
All right, thank you.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
Next item is a review of an ordinance
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Would you like to ask for a motion to have this item placed on the omnibus?
No.
Okay.
Now may I leave the place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
It's been moved by Director Miller and seconded by Director Ortiz that this item be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay? Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
The motion passes. Director Jakes, you may now move to agenda item number 8.
Review of an ordinance authorizing a non-highway use agreement and a construction and maintenance agreement with the Illinois Department of Transportation for the Red Line Extension Project. Bill.
Staff recommends approval of an ordinance authorizing a non-highway use agreement and construction and maintenance agreement for the use of state of Illinois right-of-way in support of the Red Line Extension project. CTA has identified 2 separate interactions with the planned Red Line Extension alignment in the state of Illinois right-of-ways. First, CTA proposes to construct an aerial structure for the Red Line tracks along and over I-57, and secondly, where the extension would pass underneath the 130th Street overpass. Staff is requesting authorization to enter into a non-highway use agreement to allow for the activities in these areas, and separately for a construction and maintenance agreement for the modifications to the 130th Street overpass, which CT will be making as part of the project, but IDOT will be responsible for and have jurisdiction over once completed. There's no cost for CTA's use of the IDOT right-of-way in support of the project. I'll be happy to take any questions on this side.
I have no questions.
Director Lee,
No question.
Director Miller,
No question.
Chairman Barclay,
No question.
Director Ortiz, Director Ja, Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Miller, seconded by Director Ortiz, that this matter be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take the roll call vote. Director Lee,
Yes.
Director Miller.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay.
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Director Ortiz.
Yes.
Director Ja. The motion passes. Director Jakes, you may now move to agenda item number 9.
Agenda item 9 is review of an ordinance authorizing an agreement with Development Now for Chicago for transportation services for Democratic National Convention. Kent Ray and Michael Connolly.
Here,
Okay, sure.
Mayor, General Counsel. Item number 9 involves an agreement with Development Now for, which is the host committee for the 2024 Democratic National Convention here in Chicago. The agreement would provide CTA by up to 250 buses to provide transportation services for the delegates and the attendees of the Democratic National Convention. The CTA buses are anticipated to supplement those that will be provided by private charter services. The agreement also provides for compensation to the CTA for our costs, and it makes clear that our participation is contingent upon approval by the Federal Transit Administration. I ask if there are any questions.
Kent, so, and we spoke about this yesterday, but I think it's important that the public knows that no one is going to, if approved, no one's going to be pulled off of service from somewhere else to accommodate the Democratic National Convention. Is that correct?
Correct. That's the plan.
Okay.
We'll take questions from the rest of the board members. Director Lee,
No question.
Director Miller,
No question.
Chairman Barclay,
No question.
Director Ortiz, Director Ja.
No question, but thanks for clarifying that there are no service cuts as we discussed.
Thank you.
Anticipated.
Yes.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Miller, seconded by Director Ortiz. We'll take the roll call vote. Director Ja,
Yes.
Director Ortiz,
Yes.
Director Jakes,
Yes.
Chairman Barclay,
Yes.
Director Lee,
Yes.
Director Miller.
Yes.
The motion passes. Director Jakes, you may now move to agenda item number 10.
Item 10 is review of an ordinance authorizing funding for the option term of the intergovernmental agreement, City of Chicago, through its Department of Family and Support Services for outreach to individuals in need of shelter. Tom McCollum.
Good afternoon, Directors Tom McCone, Chief Administrative Officer. I have a presentation that accompanies this proposed ordinance, so I'd like to walk you through that now. Not only the proposed ordinance, but overall our approach to addressing individuals experiencing homelessness and sheltering on our system. So you can go to the next slide. Individuals experiencing homelessness, I want to start at the high level. This is an industry-wide issue. So what you will see, and we've talked to any number of our peers on the East Coast and on the West Coast, is that to an agency, they will list this as one of their top priorities. And one of the issues that they have, as the chairman mentioned, impacting the customer experience, which is individuals
who are unsheltered and have no place else to shelter but on the transit system. And like I said, this is common. We've talked to folks in New York, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Seattle, San Francisco, and others. And just as an example of that, I've listed at the top of this a set of recent reports from industry agencies highlighting the research, the best practices, the case studies that have been done across the country on this issue, and the unique challenges and some of the unique instruments that have been put in place to address that. We're in multiple conversations with our colleagues across the country about what they're doing, what we're doing, in an effort to share those best practices, in an effort to address the issue from our standpoint. Here in Chicago, I want to give a little background on the overall issue. So every year there is a national point in time count. This is a census across the country of all of the homeless individuals in the country. In Chicago and across the country, this occurs in January. A number of volunteers and other staff members go out in an attempt to count every single person who is homeless. In 2022, there were 3,875 people identified as homeless in the city of Chicago. And of those, over 1,200 were unsheltered homeless. And those would be individuals sheltering on the CTA or in other unsheltered situations. So of that 1,200, and that 1,200, by the way, represents Chicago's share of the more than 233,000 nationwide who are unsheltered and homeless. In Chicago, 564 people were counted on the CTA as unsheltered homeless, and CTA locations were the highest for Chicago's unsheltered population. And in efforts to address the issue, I wanted to highlight what the American Public Transit Association has mentioned about what they consider one of their 4 key issues, which is transit's response to people who are homeless. They've shared a quote here from their approach. What I want to highlight is the last sentence there, which is it's important to have partnerships not only with law enforcement agencies, but social service agencies, mental health experts, advocates, and partners in addressing this issue broadly and holistically. Go to the next slide. So what are we doing? Here's an overview of what we are currently providing in terms of our outreach services. So last year at about this time, this board authorized a $2 million intergovernmental agreement with Chicago's Department of Family and Support Services for outreach to individuals experiencing homelessness on our red and blue lines. DFSS then entered into contracts with those agencies in a value of $1.6 million. Their teams ride the trains on the red and the blue lines. They get off at various stations. They follow the population, look to engage those individuals experiencing homelessness, provide various levels of services. So they offer not only connections to shelter and housing when it's available, they offer a variety of support services, including harm reduction materials, such as Narcan and test strips and other harm reduction materials, connections to healthcare, and like I said before, connections to shelter and also case management. In addition to this outreach, we have been in a multi-year agreement with the Chicago Department of Public Health, who funds the night ministries outreach on the red and the blue lines. So this occurs on Wednesday and Thursday nights respectively on those lines. In addition to the services mentioned above, they also have a set of partners, including Loyola University Medicine, who comes out and provides direct medical services to the population that are sheltering on the red and the blue line as well, in addition to the case management and other support that they provide. We'll go to the next slide. This will provide an overview of the current outreach schedule. So we have 2 outreach services agencies. The first is Haymarket. They're performing outreach on the blue line. Currently, they're stationed between O'Hare and Clark and Lake Station, so on the O'Hare branch. They have 2 shifts at which they send out teams. One is the daytime shift. You see the hours listed there. The second is the nighttime shift, which runs overnight into the early morning hours. The daytime team works 7 days a week. So they work, 365, 7 days a week. The nighttime team works Monday through Friday. They have 2 teams, 1 team per shift. A team consists of 4 to 5 people. This allows them to, as they encounter individuals or they go to outreach where they might see multiple individuals, to split off in pairs. So you can have 2 people working with clients interested in services. They can go off the system with that client and still maintain their outreach with another pair of folks on the system. The Thresholds team, they conduct outreach on the entirety of the red line from 95th to Howard. They also have a daytime shift and an evening shift, which has slightly different hours that kind of follows the population and where they're seeing successful engagements with the population. They're out 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Again, they have 2 teams of 4 to 5 people per team. They have been out there since the start of this year. Notably on the Threshold side, their daytime team is funded by outside sources. And so the additional support we've provided has allowed them to have a nighttime team as well. Go to the next page. So let's talk about some of the results. And first of all, I want to note that what we've engaged with in our partnership with the Department of Family and Support Services is what's called active contract management. So we meet with DFSS and each of these agencies on a monthly basis to review the key performance metrics that have been assigned to these contracts and review other barriers and potential opportunities that we might have with these agencies. What I'm reporting here is some of the measures that we look at on an ongoing basis with these agencies. So total encounters through September is over 5,000 encounters, and one individual can produce multiple encounters. They often do produce multiple encounters, but this shows a level of successful engagements with these clients. We have two North Star goals for this contract. One is shelter placements. So far we've had 80 successful shelter placements. That means 80 individuals interested in shelter, and importantly, shelter being available for those 80 individuals. We've had many more individuals indicate that they're interested in shelter, that they want to go to shelter, but that those shelter spaces are not available. I'll talk about that further in a moment. The second North Star goal we have is not only shelter, but moving clients into more stable and permanent housing, moving into a permanent solution for the situation that they're in and helping them move from unsheltered homelessness into a sheltered situation. There's a couple key steps in that. The first is making sure that the individuals enrolled in the Homeless Management Information System. This is required by the federal government and HUD to have enrollment into this system. It's important for case management for each of these individuals. They've had 283 individuals enroll in the HMIS system. Taking a step beyond that, there's a coordinated entry system. This allows the individuals to get in the queue for that supportive housing so that when housing does become available and fits their needs, that they can get placed and into that housing. We've had 236 individuals go into that coordinated entry system through the engagements that we've been having on the red and the blue lines. And then total successful housing placements, we've had 24 completed. There's 5 underway. We've had a number of other individuals go into substance abuse and use programs or find shelter through other means as well. You can go to the next slide. This page details the encounters by location. I know it gets a little bit small, but there's a reason it gets small is because there are lots of encounters and lots of locations. So on the left-hand side, you see the red line. On the right-hand side, you see the blue line. Again, we're collecting information about where all of the encounters with individuals experiencing homelessness are occurring throughout the system. The first thing that you will note is that it is a long list, which means that they are conducting outreach throughout the entirety of the areas in which they've been assigned to perform that outreach. The second thing you'll note is there's a couple of high locations for those encounters. On the red line, it's the Howard Station, it's on the train, it's at the Lake, State and Lake Subway Station. On the blue line, it's at the Clark and Lake Station. It's at the O'Hare Station. It's also at Jefferson Park and at Logan Square. So you can see here, there's a couple of locations, key locations where they spend a lot of their time because this is where the homeless population is residing. I will note too, one of the benefits of having the arrangement with DFSS and then also with their contract agencies is that the organization Haymarket that's conducting outreach on the blue line also maintains an outreach office, a 24/7 outreach office at the O'Hare Airport, which is right outside of our turnstiles. So as they have successful engagements and they look to move individuals into the case management, other sorts of steps that you saw before, they'll be able to use the office that they have there at O'Hare as part of that outreach as well. Go to the next slide. Shelter placements. So this is one of our North Star goals in assisting individuals to get into shelter placements. Both agencies will check on availability of shelter beds in the system, both at the start of the day and throughout the day. What they will do is if a person is interested in shelter and shelter space is available, they'll work with the city's 311 system to get that person approved to be placed into that shelter, and they'll immediately bring them into that shelter. That's a successful shelter placement. What you're seeing here on the trend of both the blue line and the red line is that we have much more demand for shelter placements than we've actually had availability for those shelter placements. You can see that's the third bullet point here, which is work is underway to make more of those shelter spaces available. We have seen incremental improvements in some of those shelter spaces availability and having some dedicated spaces for people coming off of the CTA. But, you know, in here and what we see broadly within the environment is that demand for shelter exceeds supply of shelter. And that's something that we're working with the city and noting that needs to be addressed with our homeless system in general. In addition to shelter placements and going into long-term housing, you can go to the next slide. There is additional services that are rendered as part of the outreach that is being conducted by these outreach agencies. First and foremost is the offer of food. So a successful engagement begins often in small steps. And one is, hey, are you hungry? Can I get you something to eat? Can we come off the train, stop by a McDonald's and grab some food? From there, you can get deeper into case management. Okay, what's going on? What is your situation? You can see here that it's exactly the types of services that are being rendered, and you can see sort of the ladder they go upon here from a successful engagement, the offer of food, come off the system, and then case management, getting into the homeless management information system. As I mentioned, help with IDs and identification is often a key barrier that individuals experiencing homelessness have. And then you could see the distribution of harm reductions and substance use disorder materials as well, again, including Narcan and test strips and other sorts of things that go along with that harm reduction outreach. Go to the next page. Another measure that we looked at, it's not a direct outcome like I mentioned before, but something that's important to us is customer feedback on the impacts of individual sheltering on the CTA. So what you see here is a trend of customer complaints. The chart shows complaints in 2023 and compared to 2022. And then the table at the bottom shows the last 3.5 years of those customer complaints of the impacts of people sheltering on the system. So the first thing you're going to see is that there is seasonality. We know there's seasonality to this. There are more people sheltering on the CTA in the winter than there are in the summer. That's true from the counts that we take, and that's also true from the complaints that we receive from our customers. The second thing that you'll notice is that we've had a year-over-year improvement. So from 2023 compared to 2022, we've seen a reduction in the number of customer complaints we are receiving regarding homelessness on the system and the impacts it's having on the customer experience. For the next page. An additional benefit we have of the partnership that we have with DFSS and the outreach agencies is their ability to bring more focused events and focused shelter opportunities to the outreach that we're performing on the CTA. So I want to highlight one event that happened earlier this year in the summer. So in July, the city of Chicago, led by DFSS, conducted what is called an accelerated moving event. This is a rapid rehousing event where clients who have been sheltering on the CTA were brought to Harold Washington Library. They were given the opportunity to select from available apartments along with furnishings for those apartments in an effort to move them into this long-term stable housing. It's a rapid rehousing effort. Of the 25 clients that attended the event, 19 of them have been successfully housed and remain successfully housed. Another 5 of them are in process. This is the type of event that we want to continue to bring to the clients that are sheltering on the CTA. Go to the next page. So behind the data, there are stories. Each and every person has a story. Each and every person has a unique opportunity. Each and every person has a set of barriers beyond just the lack of shelter that they're encountering in their lives that are prohibiting them from moving out of sheltering on the CTA. Listed up here are 2 testimonials from our outreach agencies, one from the red line and one from the blue line. I don't need to go through them and walk through them in detail. You can read through them yourselves. What I do want to note here is a couple of things. One is in the first testimonial, it takes a while, right? It takes a number of engagements over time to move a person successfully to resolve the other barriers that they're facing. In this case, they were facing legal barriers that needed to be brought down before they could successfully be moved into housing. The second one on the blue line, again, a number of engagements it has to take to get a person to accept treatment, right? And to move into treatment facilities. And these facilities were provided by Haymarket. There's another story I want to share as well, not listed here, but came up recently as well. There was an individual who was sheltering on the red line. Primarily, the thresholds would run into this individual at the Howard Station. He was suffering from a variety of untreated mental illness and other ailments. He was engaged by Thresholds. They found space in one of the shelters that they work with, the Mercy Housing space. As part of their case management, they enrolled this individual in a job readiness program. This is through a partner, their name is Kara, that prepares them for job readiness. So moving into shelter, getting treatment for untreated mental illness, and then getting them into a job readiness program. As part of their case management, they maintain contact with this individual. He reported to them recently that he was about to start his new job. His new job just happened to be with the CTA as part of our Second Chance program, which we accept individuals whose barrier to employment is homelessness. And so this was a great sort of unexpected connection, but really shows the unique nexus that CTA has and how we can be part of the solution as well. So it's a great positive story to hear, and we wish him plenty of success and opportunity with his career at CTA. So on the final page, go to that final page. We have our 2024 proposal. The proposal is to continue what we've been doing and expand upon it. So we want to continue the outreach that I've noted here to individuals experiencing homelessness on our system. We want to expand the outreach on the Blue Line to cover the entirety of the Blue Line. So from O'Hare all the way out to Forest Park, and our partners indicated they're ready to do that. We also want to add additional resources to the Red Line team to enhance that morning outreach that they're performing. We're going to continue to work with the city and the federal government and other partners to support initiatives to create additional shelter space and long-term housing for individuals currently sheltering on the CTA. So we're asking the board to authorize funding in 2024 of up to $2 million to continue and expand these efforts. With that, I will happy to take any questions.
Great report. What is comms doing with this information to share it with the public?
Part of it is this presentation and getting the word out here today, right, about it. But I would welcome communications also to come forward and talk about ways in which we can spread this. Obviously, we want to partner with the city very closely, and DFSS want to give them as much credit as we possibly can because they've been an excellent partner in working with us and getting the word out about the opportunities to partner with CTA to advance this issue.
Because I'm just wondering, and I'm not trying to be embarrassed, but it's been said from many members on this that we must begin to share our story. The criticism we're receiving, it's supposed to happen. It challenges us. It's supposed to make us better and not bitter. But CTA is not all junk, as some tend to think we are. That there are great things that are happening with CTA, the things that need to be worked on already being worked on. This is one of them. And I just believe it's important that the public hears about partnership with Threshold and Haymarket and a great story about, I don't know if it's a man or woman that was, who was on the train and now is poised to work for CTA. So, just wanted to know, and Brian, I'm glad you're here, how do we, if that message is getting out there, as one of the news anchors has, what makes Chicago proud? Don't let this make Chicago proud. So how does that happen? What can we do to get the word out?
Well, directors, I'm Brian Steele, Vice President of Communications. Fully concur, Director Jakes, about the telling of good stories. You've heard the phrase, good news travels nowhere, bad news travels everywhere. We work to reverse that via announcements through really important initiatives like this. For this particular announcement, we've been working with our partners at DFSS for about 2 weeks now to come up with a full outreach plan. At the conclusion of this meeting, pending the board approval, we'll issue a press release about the new contract. Beyond that, we're looking to place stories, work with reporters to get them to more fully understand all the proactive efforts that the CTA has made. We got some really good coverage last year when the board approved the original contract. We typically have media stories around this time of year when the temperatures start turning cold. People want to know what we're doing about this issue. So yeah, we plan a fulsome outreach effort using our press releases, using media outreach, trying to conjure up some interviews, and then also using our social media channels, which are a really important communications channel for us, enables us to reach a lot of audiences.
Okay, good. Good, because with the current climate in our city now, there's a strong contingency of voices out who are saying that there's one set of people that's being paid attention to while the homeless are not. And that's just not the case with the agency. So I just think that needs to, we need to really take the bull by the reins and run with it. So thank you. No further questions.
We'll take questions from other members of the board. Director Lee.
More comms on this would be great, but also I'm reading, red line, blue line. What about like the buses, bus shelters, or what's the plans around that? I read the bus quite often encounter,
Yeah, so there's certainly we focused where we knew that the largest part of the population was in this pilot program, right? And part of expanding it, right, is expanding it to the other areas where we know need that outreach as well. And I think that's what you're going to continue to see is we're going to follow kind of where the need is. One thing you'll note is a lot of the stations that were highlighted are big bus turnaround stations, right? We're talking about Jefferson Park, Howard, 95th. And so the teams are not confined only to the trains or only to the platform at those locations. They'll go throughout the property, right? Up into the station, out into the bus terminal, because we do know that people are sheltering in some of the shelters that we have at those terminals as well. And so that's included as part of this outreach as well.
Yeah, and is there like, are the teams mobile, like the customer service folks at CTA can identify folks and then call the thresholds or Haymarket? Will they respond? Like, just more transparency around that would be great since not everybody's at even these stations as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Director Miller,
No question. Good job.
Chairman Barclay,
No question.
Director Ortiz.
No, thank you. I really appreciate all of the efforts done in this space. So thank you.
Director Ja.
Yes, thank you. When I saw this, the Chicago Proud, I love how you use that. As a comms lead, I'd also encourage you, I know we do monthly reporting dashboards. There are so many special projects that are above and beyond from the CTE's remit that we are doing. I think creating a common place for folks to identify what those are and on a regular basis, providing update on the impact this is creating at the larger community would create a lot of transparency. And the last thing I would say is, as we are deploying resources, let's think about how we can use technology to simplify this process, right? For people who don't have access, language barriers, accessibility. I think there are great technologies out there that we can deploy that can collect some of this data that can make this process seamless and simplify this. So, but this is Chicago Proud. We need more of this.
And last thing, Tom, we talked about this yesterday. This is, and really for the public to know, because I brought up, hygiene, that if someone from the public calls in and complains that, maybe one of our homeless brothers or sisters, have done X, Y, and Z, that the agency immediately sends someone out to clean and to detail and things of that nature.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. A lot of these complaints will trigger, if it's a complaint about cleanliness that's associated with this, an immediate cleaning of the vehicles so that that's no longer a problem once it comes back into the station and the yard. The other thing I do want to note, and I'm glad you brought that up, Director Jakes, but this is really a team effort. So this is an issue that impacts our employees, right? Deeply and severely. And it does across the industry as well. And our employees have been, very supportive and very helpful in making sure that they're supporting the efforts of the outreach teams that are out there, understanding the unique situations of these individuals as well. So I want to thank, the other CTA employees, right, who have all been really supportive of the efforts that we've undertaken here as well.
And I want to, for the record, to reflect that we're grateful for Thresholds and the work they do.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Miller, seconded by Director Ortiz. We'll take the roll call vote. Director Lee? Yes. Director Miller?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Jakes, you may now proceed to agenda item number 11.
Agenda item 11, our next order of business today is the review of contracts number B1 through B7. Infrastructure, I have no questions.
Take questions from other members of the board. Director Ja?
No questions. Thank you.
Director Ortiz? Chairman Barclay?
No questions.
Director Miller? Director Lee? Director Jakes, we may now proceed to contract number F1 and F2.
Our next order of business today is the review of contract number F1 and F2, contract award for administration. I have no questions.
Director Lee, any questions?
No questions.
Director Miller?
No question.
Chairman Barclay?
No questions.
Director Ortiz? Director Ja?
Questions.
Director Jakes, we may now proceed to contract G1 through G2.
Our next order of business today is the review of contracts numbered G1 and G2, contract award for technology. No questions.
Director Ja?
No questions.
Director Ortiz? Chairman Barclay?
Questions.
Director Miller?
No question.
Director Lee?
No questions.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
Since there are no further questions on the contract, may I now have leave to place the 11 contracts on the omnibus?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Miller and seconded by Director Ortiz that the 11 contracts be placed on the omnibus. We will take the roll call vote. Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Since there's no further business to come before the committee, may I have a motion to approve the omnibus and recommend the omnibus for board approval?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Miller, seconded by Director Ortiz, that the omnibus be placed for board approval. We'll take the roll call vote. Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
The motion passes.
And finally, may I have a motion to turn down the air because it's cold.
Thank you.
You all right? No, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
It's been moved by Director Miller, seconded by Director Ortiz. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Ortiz? Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes, the meeting is adjourned.
All right. No.
That was the
I guess you have, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Her to start with her comments when we're ready for that part.
Chairman Barclay, you'll let us know when you're ready.
Ready.
Okay. Call it to order.
Chicago Transit Board regular meeting will come to order again.
Excuse me, but we are starting the regular meeting of the Chicago Transit Board, which has been in recess. If you can please govern yourselves accordingly. Thank you. Chairman Barclay.
Our first order of business is public comments. Georgette?
Our Chairman Barclay, we have 2 written public comments that have been submitted by John Paul Jones. We have 3 in-person public commenters and 1 who is on the phone. The individual who's on the phone is Melinda Kelly. Is she queued up? Okay, Ms. Kelly, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Barclay and committee members. My name is Melinda Kelly. I'm president of Chatham Business Association, also known as CBA, and I would like to thank the CTA board for this opportunity to speak. I want to speak about CTA's outreach and community engagement efforts on behalf of the Red Line Extension Project on the south side of Chicago. In 1972, CBA was formed with a mission to promote political and economic stability in Chatham and its surrounding communities. But since then, because of our expertise in small business growth and development, our market has expanded to serve businesses citywide throughout the state of Illinois and even on a federal level for the SBA. Over the years, we work with major financial institutions, corporations, local business, and civic leaders to spearhead economic development in some of our most vulnerable neighborhoods where the majority of our members have their business operations. African American businesses have a significant impact on our communities because they create and sustain employment opportunities for our communities, thus helping us combat crime and poverty while encouraging literacy, education, and entrepreneurship on a local level. In that vein, that I am here appearing before this committee to share the crucial role CTA has played in its outreach and community engagement and informing the community members on the challenges, opportunities, and proposed positive impact that will result from the Red Line Extension Project. Specifically, I would also like to thank CTA's Juan Prieto, Director of Diversity and Disadvantaged Business Liaison Officer, and Tanisha Marshall, Vice President of the Red Line Extension, as they have appeared and presented at various community events that targeted the small business community and shared relevant information on CTA's diversity program. In addition to introducing the primes shortlisted for the Red Line extension, CTA has encouraged those primes to host independent outreach events like the ones hosted on the South Side by the FH Passion, Ragnar Benson, and the other venture team at the Kroc Center. The leadership of the Red Line extension primes who were shortlisted also appeared in person at CBA's monthly business membership meeting at the Discover Center. And these outreach events are hosted in the community and near the Red Line Extension project. For over 51 years, it is our mission to improve the quality of life for Chicago's low-income community residents, including those with disabilities, by leveraging economic development opportunity, which is why CBA supports the CTA Red Line Extension project. CBA stands ready to continue to partner and support CTA on our shared mission of advocating for disadvantaged and minority-owned businesses. My information is available, and I also submitted
That's time.
and written.
Thank you very much for your comments. Our next public in-person commentator is Sheila Black-Hannick. Please come and have a seat at the desk. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Georgette, we have materials for the directors if we may.
I will take them and I will make sure that the directors get all of your materials. Thank you very much. No,
Thank you. 2 years ago today, November 15th, 2021, my son David boarded the Blue Line at Forest Park around 6 p.m. Shortly after midnight on November 16th, he was found unresponsive but still breathing on a train at the Rosemont stop. 5 minutes elapsed from the time a CTA worker called 911 and paramedics arrived on the scene. Despite everyone doing everything they could, David died on the floor of that train from an opioid overdose. He was one of 31 fatal overdoses on CTA property in 2021. That number doubled to 60 in 2022. I want to stop overdoses, and so do my fellow advocates of the Westside Heroin Opioid Task Force. We share your goal of making the CTA safer for all riders, and we want to help by getting the opioid overdose reversal drug Narcan into the hands of riders so that they can help each other. Giving them each box. See. Task force focuses on harm reduction, including street outreach in areas of greatest need, like communities of color that have been hardest hit by the opioid overdose epidemic. Data about fatal overdoses on the CTA reflect this fact. Most of the people who died from overdose on CTA property between 2018 and 2022 were Black. Task force member organizations, including Thresholds, Haymarket, and the Night Ministry, are already partnering with the CTA by doing outreach to unhoused people on some train lines and at some stations. And they are wonderful. We love them. We ask that you build on these amazing partnerships by empowering CTA riders to help one another with Narcan placed on CTA platforms in easy open receptacles provided and maintained by task force organizations, including the Cook County Department of Public Health and Chicago Recovery Alliance. Narcan on train platforms will add to the impact of other measures, like the personal hygiene and Narcan vending machine currently being piloted at the 95th Red Line station. Narcan on train platforms will get this life-saving medicine into riders' hands and onto trains faster. Narcan on train platforms demonstrates to the public that the CTA cares about all its riders and the communities it serves at a time when we all want ridership to increase. Narcan on trains platforms may shorten train delays due to overdoses as people can be revived before paramedics arrive. Narcan is easy to use and each kit has simple instructions. The CTA can increase the Narcan public service ads already present on some trains and extend that information to the TV screens on the platforms. CTA riders want to help each other and are ready to use Narcan. On International Overdose Awareness Day in August, the task force handed out nearly 100 Narcan kits on the Green Line in an hour. In closing, we ask that the CTA establish a work group to make Narcan on CTA platforms a reality in the coming year.
That's time.
It is too late to save my son, but by November 15th, 2024, if we work together, We will have saved other lives by empowering CTA riders to use Narcan. Thank you. I'm sorry I went over time.
That's okay. I just have to be equitable, and we have all kinds of people in the audience, that's all. Our next public commentator is Samuel Gardino.
My name is Sam Gardino. I'm Area Director of Homeless Services for Thresholds. And I think Tom's report covered a lot. And his individual stories are stories that I know and are real and made an impact. So this partnership, especially as we've added the second shift thing, has been a game changer for us. We started in January. But not only were we able to have a whole team working on the second shift up and down the entire red line, but the support of CTA people on the ground, the platform staff and others, and security contractors has been crucial to make us, to help us do our job. And yes, they do tell us about it. And they keep an eye on us, you know, making sure everything's going okay. And generally speaking, they've been a great resource. The support of the management people involved, I've never seen an organization of this size have such accessibility to senior management, including nighttime accessibility with specific questions. Managers have made themselves available, has been just a different touch. I want to emphasize what Tom said in terms of the shelter, and then of course the housing. How many personnel hours per every number of shelter placement it took, along with the involvement of the participant, the unsheltered person on this day. That's a whole nother report that someone better than me would have to put together. How many personnel hours it takes and the participant involvement in terms of the rapid housing and accelerated moving events and housing and other housing options. Those are deep dives of people, and we've been very fortunate by having access to finding people who are ready to take those deep dives. In the meantime, we want people to have naloxone. We want people to have something to eat. Best engagement tool, we do it all the time. Our meetings in our professional life is over food, right? And create to get people sit and to talk with us. Technology is another interesting question. We're improving some of our technology right now in this next year to make it easier for staff and participants to do more of the work on tablets right when we're with them. It's kind of hard to use a laptop on a bouncing train. To make very clear. So we are improving as part of this thing. Some of the devices and some of our interagency accessibility and data transportation. We do this next year. And okay, I'm not going to give you a story. You've heard a few, but I was just kind of thumbing through our health record before I came over. And I noticed one about one of the participants who was housed through the accelerated moving event. It's a note as we continue ongoing support. So we're trying to help people maintain this housing, right? With case management. And the case management.
That's time, Mr. Gardino.
Okay. Well, anyway, it's cool. And it ends up with his mom helping him direct decorate his apartment, who hadn't found it for the years as an unsheltered person. All right, guys. Thank you. I really appreciate this. And I appreciate the spirit in this room about this.
Thank you. And our last public commentator for today is Jeffrey Pollard.
Good afternoon, Mr.
Excuse me, but if we can just ask whomever's cell phone is playing to please silence your phone. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, board members, and Mr. President, thank you for the opportunity to address you this afternoon. My name is Jeffrey Collard. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Haymarket Center. We are Chicago's largest center treating individuals for substance use disorders and mental health. Also, as of June 1st, we received federal designation as a federally qualified health center lookalike, which means that we are able to integrate substance use, mental health, and primary care for our patients. We serve 12,000 people per year, the majority of whom are experiencing or have experienced homelessness. Almost all of them have no resources or are on Medicaid. We were founded 47 years ago by Father Ignatius McDermott, who had a personal passion for helping what were then mostly alcoholic men on the street At the time, he founded Haymarket as a place to bring in men that were found sleeping in doorways on Skid Row, which is where a nice neighborhood of West Madison was at the time. To bring them into a safe environment where they had a chance to get sober and to get into recovery. So we've expanded on that mission over the years greatly. But to continue that same mission into a full continuum of treatment and care. We've partnered with the Chicago Department of Family and Support Services, DFSS, for many years on projects to provide outreach to individuals experiencing homelessness at O'Hare Airport, which you heard earlier. We have an office there 24 hours a day to encounter people experiencing homelessness. And also in community areas, including homeless encampments. As you've already heard, in the past year, we launched the outreach project on the CTA Blue Line. Haymarket CTA outreach teams are some of our most passionate staff. And we're fortunate to partner with the passionate staff of Thresholds and the passionate staff of DFSS and CTA. We have the 2 shifts, as Mr. McCoat told you. I have one happy correction to make to what he told you, which is that our overnight team, as he said, was Monday through Friday. It is now 7 days a week. We had to staff up. So both of our teams, 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. and 11 p.m. to 7:30 a.m. are 7 days a week. The current assignment and staffing cover the Blue Line from Clark and Lake through to O'Hare. The teams encounter individuals both on the trains themselves and at and around the stations, as you heard, with particular attention to hot spots, where we've observed individuals congregating and where CTA has also observed or has received calls from the neighborhood and wants to be responsive. The project's goals, as you heard, are to triage people experiencing homelessness out of the CTA and into appropriate services and ultimately housing.
Mr. Collins, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We want to thank all of our public comments this afternoon, sharing us. Everyone provided us with great insight. Want to highlight you, Ms. Agnew, for addressing the board to discuss this important issue. I'm going to ask President Carter if he please make sure that he connects you to our safety person who's responsible for safety and also community engagement to have further discussions and dialogue with you as to how we may be helpful in dealing with this very critical issue. So thank you for coming. Appreciate sharing. Thank you. Our next order of business on the agenda is our president's report by President Dorval Carter. Thank you.
Members of the board, good afternoon. Our remarks today will address CJ's past, present, and promised future. I'd like to begin with a few thoughts regarding my proposed fiscal year 2024 budget recommendation, which this body is considering today. $1.99 billion balanced budget recommendation for fiscal year 2024 that has been presented to you includes, as you understand it, no fare increases and maintains the delivery of bus and rail service. Plans to add additional service in 2024 to meet our growing ridership demand. The spending plan envisions and provides resources for a promising year in which we expect continued positive ridership trends and growth across our system. The budget also anticipates infrastructure investments that will further modernize our system and improvements in security and upgrades to our technology tools, including our Ventra fare system. Perhaps most important is that CTA will add bus and rail service in 2024 as we continue to hire and train bus and rail operators to address current agency workforce shortages. As we announced just last week, in accordance with my announcement last month, that we would soon make service adjustments reflecting growth in our workforce. Rail service is already being added back to rail lines that saw recent temporary reductions due to construction work on the Blue Line. In the year to come, these continued service adjustments will result in shorter waits for riders, increased reliability, as scheduled service reflects the increase in the available workforce. We all share the same goals in terms of improved service, continued hiring for key positions in other vital areas. This budget helps to address those concerns by anticipating increased workforce numbers as well as infrastructure improvements. And so I would ask your support of the proposed 2024 budget and appreciate your continued advice, consultation, and thoughtful leadership as we look forward to the implementation of this budget in the new year. With regards to ridership, I'm pleased to report to the board that we continue to see positive trends in recent system-wide ridership numbers. September and October were the two highest ridership months since the beginning of the pandemic. In September, our customers took 25.6 million rides on CTA, trains, and buses. And last month, they topped that post-pandemic record by taking 26.7 million rides. In addition, just last week, we had 3 more million-plus ride days, bringing us to 25 total days since August 1st, when rides have exceeded 1 million rides. In fact, between January 1st and October 31st, customers took more than 233 million rides aboard CTA vehicles, which is up 14% compared to that same 10-month period last year. I want to thank our customers, from daily commuters to those choosing transit during visits to this great city, and ask that they continue to stay with us. The continued increases in ridership bode well for the future of transit in Chicago and is key to continued improvement in this new normal that we live in today. Like all of you, I am also focused on our hiring and training, and I am encouraged by the progress that we continue to make. During the month of October, we hired 130 new bus operators. It represents our best month of the year so far. And we are now on track to reach a total of nearly 1,000 new bus operators hired by the end of the year, completely blowing through our goal of 700 bus operators for the year. We have transitioned a dozen more employees into rail operator positions upon their successful completion of training, which we have increased to 100 rail operators for this year alone. And I am committed, and let me clarify this because there's a lot of social media suggesting otherwise. I asked my staff about a month and a half ago to come up with a plan that would allow me to increase the number of rail operators that we are putting into seats for the next fiscal year. They have presented me with a plan that I requested, not a plan that I was waiting to think about. A plan that I requested that would more than double the number of rail operators that we will have next year, that we will hire for next year, from 100 to 200 operators for the upcoming year. I want to be clear, there is nothing that I have been doing that has been intending to prevent or create barriers for the hiring that we have to do. In fact, it would be oxymoronic for me to be pursuing that type of strategy. The work that I'm doing is trying to find ways to increase the hiring that we're doing, particularly with rail operators, which present a unique set of challenges because of the length of time that it takes to train them, and because of the safety considerations that we have to be mindful of in the way that we go about doing that. Having said that, I'm committed to increasing the number of operators that we had from this year to next year, and have instituted a series of steps, including the increase in the number of rail instructors that we have, to allow us to do that. So over the course of the following year, you're going to see a dramatic increase, as we have been doing, I would point out, over the past couple of years, to increase the number of rail operators that we have. I am optimistic, which is why I put in my budget the expectation that by the end of next year, we will be back to 2019 levels for service for both bus and rail, that we will be able to meet that objective that will allow us to provide the service levels that I committed to providing 2 years ago. And I want to remind everyone that when I started my Meeting the Moment plan a year and a half ago, the initial step was to stabilize our service. I'm happy to tell you that as we come up on the end of this year, the service has been stabilized. We're now providing daily between 95, 98, 99% of scheduled service, where a year and a half ago, those numbers were in the 60% range. I am mindful of the fact that the amount of service that we're putting out is less than what we were putting out a year and a half ago. But it is reflective of the commitment that I made when I implemented the Meeting the Moment plan, which is that I would align the service to the workforce that I had available. And that in doing that, I would improve the reliability of the service that we are providing. I have met those objectives. And now the good news is, as we move into the next year, I'm now going to be able to restore the service levels as our workforce has increased, just as I committed to doing a year and a half ago. So the point that I want to make is that I have never misled anyone in what my plan was for what we're doing here. What people need to remember, what I want to make sure that I'm expressing to this board, is that it takes time to do this. It is not something that can be done overnight. If I could do it overnight, I would have done that. The truth of the matter is, we have made significant progress over the course of the past year. That progress has put us in a position to start to do the things that we want to do in the upcoming year. I will continue, as I have done this entire year, in a very transparent way, to share with you my progress at implementing that objective. I will share with you the service levels that we are adjusting. I will share with you the scheduled service that we're putting out. I will share with you the number of people that we are hiring in both our bus and our rail operator positions, so that there won't be any question as to whether I'm meeting or not meeting the objectives of the following year. And at the end of next year, you will have a comprehensive understanding of where CTA service stands relative to the workforce that we've been able to recruit, retain, and continue to commit ourselves to as an overall strategy for CTA. In that regard, I think it's important to note it that just today, I attended a graduation of employees, of over 100 employees, who have successfully completed initial training programs for a number of positions, including bus operators, bus mechanics, bus and rail supervisors, customer service assistants, and rapid transit operators. These are events that we've been holding every month for the last 6 or 7 months, have an ability to show and recognize the new employees who are coming onto CTA, but also as an indication of the fact that we are adding to our numbers on a monthly and a regular basis. Tomorrow, we'll be hosting a veteran-focused career fair. So please, if any of you know any veterans who are looking for work, please let them know that CTA is hiring. And we're holding a special event tomorrow just for veterans to increase the number of veterans here at CTA. In the coming days, we will launch an online survey to gather public feedback regarding our performance metrics dashboard. As you know, this is a dashboard that I launched earlier this year that includes a lot more detail in terms of what our performance metrics are, as well as the ability to mine and dig into the data around that detail to determine certain information about our service and how we're performing it on a daily basis. We believe that the range of performance measures that we have put in place and the data that we are providing in our dashboard puts CTA on the cutting edge within the public transit industry for information transparency. However, the information we gather will provide us with more insight directly from riders by allowing individuals to weigh in on changes or additions they would like to see made to the dashboard. I believe this is a unique opportunity for us to gather thoughts directly from our customers and others to help us provide them with what they consider to be useful and vital information around CTA service, which is the purpose for why the dashboard was created. On several occasions throughout the past year, I've also discussed with all of you the Equity and Infrastructure Project, or EIP program. EIP is a national group that is focused on promoting contracting opportunities for historically underutilized businesses or hubs. And CTA was one of the 5 initial signatories to this program, or as we refer to, first movers. This is obviously something that I believe very strongly in and has been sort of the foundation of a lot of the work that I've done, not only at CTA, but in my entire career. So it is my pleasure to inform you that the board that I have accepted EIP's appointment to serve as one of its co-chairs, which will allow me to play a pivotal role in the program's goal of helping to build generational wealth and reduce the racial wealth gap by assisting hubs that seek to participate in large infrastructure projects as prime contractors, joint venture partners, or as equity participants. Transit equity is incredibly important to me. And under my leadership, CTA has grown into an industry leader for working with, developing, and providing new and unique opportunities for small and disadvantaged business enterprises. I look forward to helping facilitate EIP's growth and to advocate for new, innovative programs like CTA's current joint project with SEPTA, Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, which is the first major EIP project that will create a joint small business certification program, allowing contractors to compete for project awards for both agencies once they are certified by either organization. Finally, I'd like to close on a more personal note. Something that leaves my heart very bitter and heavy, but allows me to acknowledge the life's work of a good friend and colleague of mine. You all know Bill Mooney IV, who we refer to as Bill Mooney Jr. Most of you probably do not have or have not had the pleasure of working with his father, Bill Mooney III, who we also refer to as Bill Mooney Sr. Unfortunately, Bill Mooney Sr. recently passed away. For those of you who did not know him, I would like to share a few details about his history with CTA. Bill was a graduate of the Illinois Institute of Technology and Civil Engineering, and he went on to earn his MBA at the University of Chicago. He began his career in public service as a Chicago police officer on the transit detail. He later joined an accelerated management program at CTA, transitioning from law enforcement to becoming a transit professional. Bill went on to become a 34-year transit veteran. Along the way, he and I personally worked together when he was the head of the paratransit program at a time when he was starting off in his management career at CTA, and I was starting off as a staff attorney at CTA. One of the first projects that I actually got to work on. And Bill and I together worked on privatizing the paratransit service at CTA and bringing in outside vendors to provide that service, a model that is currently being used by the paratransit service that's provided by PACE today. Bill went on to serve in roles in rail operations, bus operations, and ended his tenure as chief operating officer. Many of these positions are positions that I also got a chance to work with him as I moved up my career path at CTA as well. After leaving the CTA, Bill provided transit consulting services to agencies across the world. He was truly known as an industry leader and innovative, and is recognized not only nationally, but internationally as one of the brightest minds in public transportation that we have all known. As I indicated on a personal note, I've had the pleasure of working with Bill for many years. In fact, we grew up as professionals together here at CTA. Rising through the ranks, I can say firsthand that he was not only a consummate professional, but he set a standard to which we all aspired. And while Bill Mooney Sr. gave us so much of his professional life to CTA and public transit, what we didn't see coming is that he would also give us another incredible gift. His son, Bill Mooney Jr. The younger Bill has not only lived up to his father's legend by living and breathing CTA excellence, he has served as a shining reflection of what a transit professional should be, and is mirroring his father's diligence and commitment, not only to CTA, but to this industry. I know that his dad was very proud of him, as we all are here at CTA. Bill Sr. was also father-in-law to Leah Dawson Mooney, a consummate transit professional who only recently ended her own accomplished run as our Director of Strategic Planning and Policy. And he is also uncle to both Catherine Ekstrom-Dicus and Virgil Allen, both who are valued members of our transit operations team. The Mooney legacy is a tremendous example of how the CTA family of employees is often comprised of generations of excellent employees, wives, daughters, sons, husbands, and extended family who see public transit as the family business. Bill, on behalf of the entire CTA family, I want to again extend my condolences to you, Leah, children, and the rest of the immediate and extended Mooney family. Your father gave CTA so much, and his legacy lives on, both through his mentorship of others who continue at CTA today, and with every day that you serve this great agency. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. President Carter, for the update. I'm encouraged by the direction of the numbers presented in your report this month, particularly the increases to ridership. I'm also pleased that violent crime on the system is going down as well.
I didn't mention that, but it is.
No. Other people have mentioned it for you. Thank you. These are indicators that the measures implemented by you and your team to address these post-pandemic challenges are moving in the right direction. But as you know, and your team members are already aware, we're not quite there yet. As far as our meeting recovery goals and restoring rider complete confidence are concerned. We are reminded of these most recently at our budget hearing by the comments from our speakers. Most of the comments we heard that night pertained to service reliability, hiring, and training processes, and the quality of service we provide, particularly cleanliness and social service matters. We know these are complex issues, and we know you and your team are working to address them. To restate what I said at the briefings, I encourage you to continue your work, but I also challenge you to consider creative ways to leverage the partnerships and strategies we currently have in place to expand our efforts. I said this particularly about our social service partnerships. We heard great stories of how those partnerships with the city and social service outreach organizations are working. Let's explore more ways to minimize that impact and perhaps find some synergies that can address the other concerns raised by our customers. And finally, I also want to echo your sentiments about Mr. Mooney. I often mention my early years at CTA interning as a rail conductor during my summer breaks. Mr. Mooney then was a longtime CTA employee. He was bigger than life then, and over the years grew to be a leader, as we all know. He knew everyone at CTA and everyone knew him. And it was because he worked hard and was passionate about serving our customers. That same solid reputation, work ethic, and leadership lives through you, Bill, and the great work that you do in leading our infrastructure department. On behalf of the board, I want to extend our condolences to you and Leah and your entire family as you mourn the loss of your dad. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. Now I'd like to open it up to any other board members who have any comments and respond to President Carter.
President Carter, thank you for your reports. And, you too are in my thoughts and prayers because I feel your pain over here. Can you, or maybe someone from your team, just explain, give me a couple of minutes of why it's important. You talked about this in your report because at the budget hearing, I wasn't here physically, but I was online, that there was concerns that you're not hiring enough rail operators. But in not hiring enough rail operators, can you explain the process, and you mentioned it, of how you can't just hire somebody on Thursday and make them a rail operator on Friday? Can you explain the process?
Yeah, the training someone to become a rail operator is a 3 to 5 month process that we put our employees through. It's important to keep in mind that operating a train is a very complicated undertaking. Operating it safely is even more complicated. And we are committed to making sure that we're not just putting people in these seats, but we're putting people in these seats who are qualified and certified to safely operate this equipment. There is a lot of work that our training and instruction team does to prepare people who ultimately fill these roles. And we pull these people from what we call flagger positions at CTA. A lot of times people ask, why don't you just hire off the street? You hire bus operators. Reason is working on the railroad, working on the right of way is a very, very different experience. And it's one in which you have to get comfortable with being there. And part of an operator's job is not just operating that train, it's also being able to maneuver on our tracks safely, being able to understand how to communicate with our control center effectively, being able to understand the way in which our vehicles operate on the right of way. And a lot of that experience occurs when you are a flagger at CTA. So we pull from the flagging ranks to fill out the operator ranks. Now, the good news is that I've got over 100 flaggers right now. So I have a good pool of flaggers to pull from. And as positions open up in the training program, we move them into the rail operator position to do what we call making them dual qualified, which means they can be both a flagger, but they also have the ability to operate a train. The process that one has to go through to get trained to be an operator is very intensive. It involves classroom study. It involves practical operations. It requires a certification test that you have to take in order to show that you have mastered all of the requirements of this. Lester is somewhat familiar with some of this during his time as conductors. Conductors had to do some of the training themselves, although they didn't have to do the same level of training that an operator would have to do. But they had to know how the train operated. They had to know, how to communicate with the control center. They had to know a lot of the things that were required to effectively not only manage the train, but to respond to issues that may occur on that train on a daily basis. We have more than doubled the size of the classes that we have been putting in place to train our operators in this process. Before the pandemic hit, the average size of a class was somewhere between 8 to 12 people. We increased it during the pandemic to 22. We are now up to 40 and more. And so we have been constantly trying to increase the throughput. One of the challenges is you need people to train them. You need rail instructors. And as we dealt with the great resignation that has hit not just the rail operators, not just our bus operators, it also hit our instructors and other people. And so there was a need for us to, for lack of a better word, backfill for those positions as well. In addition to that, the same group of people is where our rail supervisors come from. And if I don't have rail supervisors, I don't have people to effectively handle service restoration and other issues that happen over the on the service over the course of the day. And so part of what we're doing is balancing all these other positions that we need to fill vacancies for, while also trying to prioritize what I view as the most critical position, which is rail operators. And that has been a process that we have been engaged in, while also dealing with the never-ending continuum of people retiring and resigning during that same time. So the good news is that we've made progress this year. We have more rail operators now than we did at the beginning of the year. The bad news is it's not a big leap. It's not like what I've seen on the bus side. On the bus side, it's a pure numbers game, and I'm able to move people through the bus training program much faster than the rail operator training. It's just not the same level of training that's required to do that. The biggest piece for a bus operator is getting your CDL. And a lot of that work we're now assisting them in advance. On the rail side, I have to not only deal with, like I said, the training aspects, I have to deal with the other demands that are being placed on the same group of instructors to fill other positions on the rail side of the house, and find a way to balance those needs so that I don't have Don Bonds calling me up complaining about the fact that he doesn't have enough people to do what I want him to do on the service. So about a month and a half ago, when I realized that our rail operator numbers were not going to be as good as I wanted them to be, I pulled the staff together. I pulled, my rail ops people together. I pulled my hiring people together. I pulled my training instruction people together. I pulled my planning people together. And I said, I need for you to put together a plan on how we're going to increase this dramatically for the upcoming year. That plan is what was being presented to me. The point that I wanted to make in my remarks is that there was a representation being made that a plan had been given to me that I was sitting on. And I needed to make a decision about that. That was what some of the comments were that you were hearing at the budget hearing. The reality is that the only thing that was with me was what I had asked them to give me. And I wasn't sitting on it. I was getting the information I needed to understand how we were going to implement it, which is a very different conversation. And so I continue to look for ways to increase the number of people that we put through the training process and to increase the number of rail operators that we have in seats at CTA. And it is a process that we'll all be committed to over the course of the next year. Believe me, there is no one who wants to get service levels back faster than me. If for no other reason than it eliminates some of the criticism that I've got for the fact that people don't believe I'm doing it fast enough. What I can tell you is that I'm not going to do it in an unsafe manner. I'm not going to risk the safety of the million people who ride the CTA every day just to put someone in a seat who isn't ready to take on that responsibility. CTA has a very good history, very good safety record. That's the result of the fact that we have a very rigorous training program that we believe puts us in a position to feel comfortable and confident that people who are operating these trains know how to operate it effectively, efficiently, and safely. And I won't compromise that in order to meet a number. So we are committed to doing what we need to do. We are adding the resources that we need to make this happen. We are looking at ways to be innovative and creative in the approach to take to training them so that we can make sure that we are being as efficient as possible. But we're going to do it in a safe manner. And at the end of the day, it's my belief, as you've heard me state here today, and as I stated in my budget, that we will be able to restore service, not just on bus, but on rail, to where we were before we faced the challenges that occurred, I would remind everybody, as a result of a pandemic, not as a result of any intentional act that CTA staff or myself implemented to create the problem.
It was yesterday, we were talking to, and I'll say this and then now, Mr. Chairman, I'll be done. Yesterday, Jeremy brought up a great point, and I actually end up experiencing that point this morning. I have a restaurant that I go to, the Original House of Pancakes. Oh, geez, yes. You know, this morning, because that's my ritual, is this morning.
It's a great restaurant.
It is a great restaurant. And when I went this morning, I noticed that service was faster. Didn't complain, you know, when it wasn't. And I realized that the service was fast. So I talked to the manager and I said, what happened? I said, yeah, food was out there, blah, 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 everybody was moving. And what they said was, and that's what made me think about you, Jeremy, is that they were able to hire more people. And now because of patience that happened with, you know, those of us that are faithful customers, they're able to hire more people. We're able to get our food faster and get out quicker. You know, and I thought about you and I thought about what you said. And I think about, you know, some of the, many of the comments that's out there. There's in-person social media, whether it's cuts versus optimization, you know, it's Schlockenspiel, you know, whichever one you want to call it. But at the end of the day, the restoring, and I want to say this for the record, that the restoring, based upon what I'm understanding, restoring is not because something was cut. Restoring is because you had during this period of time, and we cannot ignore it, that during this period of time, CTA lost people through death, CTA lost people through retirement, CTA lost people through just quitting. You know, it was across the country that, you know, people were clamoring for people to find work. Folks realized that they could live off of a little during the pandemic. But now hiring is at an uptick because money has run out. Now people need to go back to work. And so I say all that to say to you that, yes, we will continue challenging. Yes, we will continue pushing. But, and no, your critics are never going to stop criticizing. But the best way to deal with it is to meet the metrics that you have set in place and keep checking those boxes. And that's it. That's all I have to say about it.
Let's put a finer point on your comment about Jeremy. What Jeremy said, for those of you who don't know what was discussed, he was making the point that the impact of the pandemic and the challenges around the workforce are not unique to CTA. And the point that he was making was that you go to a restaurant today, in many cases, you wait longer to get your meal.
Didn't tell him to turn his phone on.
He's one of his critics. You go to the restaurant and they don't, you know, you go in there and they tell you got a 20-minute wait. And you're looking around, you see tables that are open, but they won't seat you at those tables because they don't have enough wait staff to do that. What they don't do is shut down the restaurant.
Right.
You know, and it's sort of like what I was doing with the optimization thing was the equivalent to recognizing that I may have, you know, I have tables that I can't use because I don't have people to serve me. The very same, you know, assessment of I have service I want to provide, but I don't have enough operators to run it. So it's not a question like I don't have enough equipment to run more service. It's not a question of, you know, I can't create a schedule to run more service. The question was I don't have the people to run more service. So when you're talking about a restaurant, or whether you're talking about a hotel, which I think was his other example, you know, a hotel may not be rooms because they don't have enough, you know, housekeeping staff to clean all the rooms. Or the way I've discussed it is that an airline, you know, when you ride airlines today, they are packed. It doesn't matter what day you want to go, what week you want to go, it's packed. You know what else? You don't have as many options. I used to be able to go get a flight to go to Washington, D.C. I could go almost every hour to Washington, D.C. There was a flight to D.C. like every hour. Now it's like 3 or 4 flights a day. Why is that? Because they don't have enough pilots. They don't have enough flight attendants. The truth of the matter is there is so much that has changed in the way we live our daily lives that was impacted by the pandemic. That is part of what we accept as the new normal. Now, does anyone call up United and complain about the fact they are running more routes to Washington, D.C. than they used to do? No. Do they get upset about the fact that they got to be on a plane now that's even more crowded than ever because of the fact they aren't running as much flights? No. They just accept that. But when it comes to public transportation, everybody wants to complain about why you aren't doing things like they were before the pandemic hit. And it's the same problem. You know, the good news is we're getting better and we'll continue to get better. I want you as a board to push me, to push my team, to hold us accountable for what it is that we're committing to do. You're going to see metrics every month that are going to tell you that. So to anybody who thinks there isn't transparency around what we're doing or what we're not doing, I will be reporting on this every month. Point is, it takes time. And no one has figured out solutions to that. And let me just say this. There's been a lot of discussion about, are we behind Washington, D.C. or New York or Philadelphia or stuff like that? When you look at what's going on in those cities, first of all, if you look at one transit system, you see one transit system. 1, 2, whatever issues may be happening in Philadelphia may be very different than what's happening in Chicago. But more importantly, just because you increase your schedule doesn't mean you're meeting your schedule. And you may recall when I optimized my schedule, it was because I could have kept on saying that I'm running 2019 level service. But if I don't have the workforce to do it, and that workforce has changed dramatically because of resignations and retirements and other things, which is a very different issue than what I was dealing with during the pandemic. Just to be clear, I didn't have a great resignation problem during the pandemic. What I had during the pandemic was an illness problem. Right. People caught COVID, they had to stay home. That was a constantly changing dynamic that I had to deal with. What happened when the pandemic ended and the great resignation started, I had a totally different problem. It wasn't a question of someone's going to be out sick for 5 days, but the fact that they weren't here at all. That required a totally different strategy, which is what we implemented with the Meeting the Moment plan, and which we have continued to execute for all of last year, for all of this year, and a portion of last year to get us to where we are right now. And I don't know that anyone can say that we're in a worse place today than we were a year ago. We may not be happy with where we are. We may not be where we want to be, but we're not worse. And that to me is progress. And that's the only point I'm trying to make.
Thank you, President Carter. Any other comments before we move on?
I think a lot of my comments were addressed.
I just want to say one last thing to move on. Your comment about safety, making sure people are well trained, because if something happens on one of these trains because we're rushing this process, there's not a board member up here that wants you to rush the process.
No, I don't believe that.
We have to safeguard the public. And I appreciate your approach to that because, if something happens because someone was ill prepared to operate a train, then all of us would feel a sense of responsibility that we rushed this process. So let the process unfold the way it should so that the people who are operating these trains know exactly what they're doing so that the public is protected. That's right, Mr. Chair. All right, moving right along. Anybody else before? Because we'll be here all night.
No,
okay?
thank you, Mr. President.
No, we won't. And dinner is not served, so. Our next order of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of October 13th, 2023. May I have a motion to approve?
So move.
It's been moved by Director Miller, seconded by Director Ortiz, that the minutes from the meeting of October 13th, 2023 be approved. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Dr. Ja?
Yes.
The motion to approve the minutes passes.
Thank you. Our next order of business is executive session. Is my understanding, Kent, that there's no executive session today?
Chairman, no executive session.
Our next order of business is a report from the Committee of Finance, Audit and Budget, which will be presented by Director Jakes.
Chairman, the committee met earlier this afternoon and approved the October 13th, 2023 committee minutes and reviewed the finance report. The committee reviewed 7 ordinances. Review of an ordinance amending the fiscal years 2023 through 2027 capital improvement program and authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with Cook County through its Department of Transportation and Highways for a bus priority corridor planning study. Second, the review of an ordinance adopting a budget for calendar year 2024 and financial plan for calendar years 2025 through 2026. Third, review of an ordinance approving the fiscal years 2024 through 2028 capital improvement program and authorizing the filing and execution of grant cooperative agreements and amendments and related materials. Fourth, review of an ordinance authorizing the acquisition of real property located at 5628 West Roosevelt Road, Chicago. Fifth, review of an ordinance authorizing a non-highway use agreement and a construction and maintenance agreement with the Illinois Department of Transportation for the Red Line Extension project. Six, review of an ordinance authorizing an agreement with Development Now for Chicago for transportation services for the Democratic National Convention. Seven, review of an ordinance authorizing funding for the option term of the intergovernmental agreement with the City of Chicago through its Department of Family and Support Services for outreach to individuals in need of shelter. Mr. Chairman, the committee also reviewed 11 contracts. The committee placed the 7 ordinances and 11 of the contracts on the omnibus. The committee approved and recommended for board approval 7 ordinances and the 11 contracts. That concludes the report of the Finance Audit and
I will now entertain a motion to approve the omnibus.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Miller, seconded by Director Ortiz, that the omnibus be approved. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
The motion to approve the omnibus passes.
Our next order of business is a construction report from Bill Mooney, our Chief Infrastructure Officer, Juan Pablo Prieto, our Director of Diversity Program. Yeah.
Good evening. Mayor, Chief Infrastructure Officer, and I'm doing this, not take a moment to discuss. I've only ever known the CTA family, and I'm still overwhelmed by the output of support behind us that we've received during this time period. The board, President Carter, like the leadership here. My father loved the CTA dearly, even long after he left. He would send messages as he traveled transit agencies about things he'd seen, things we do. Sometimes the question of what the heck were we thinking? If you knew my father, it probably wasn't that nice, but yeah. And truly, if there was a judge of character of a man, it's the lives that he's taught. Just the stories that I've heard over the last couple of days just truly defines him as a large and life person. And I truly appreciate all the love. So thank you. But do you want us to get back to the good business we do? So, I'm joined today by
Juan Pablo Prieto, Director of Diversity Programs.
So we'll move on to our first project. This is our CDOT Damon Station project. Can you advance a couple slides, please? Move to the first picture, please. So we continue now actually to come out of the ground at Damon Station and do steel work. So move on to the next picture, please. Start here. So we continue pier placements, which we completed. We completed the major stair tower in the middle that you've seen kind of going up 5 stories wide, and we started hanging steel. So here you can see in this first photo, the steel structure for the main station house going up, as well as that elevated bridge that will connect us to both the north and south platforms. Next slide, please. They've finished most of the work in the main that impacts the streetway there on Lake Street. The street's been closed for an extended period of time. So here you can see some of that restoration work. There'll be a lot of people, I'm sure, that will be glad to see that corner open up a little more again. Next slide, please. As well as you can see some of that restoration of the steel work. So you've seen them placing these columns over the last few months, and here they are finishing them off with the fresh coat of paint. Next slide, please. Our next project is our non-revenue rail vehicle facility. We've moved forward to the photos. Project is continues forward on budget and tight to schedule. We are looking, very excitedly towards the spring and opening up this facility. We worked a lot on the hardening of it going into winter months. You'll see kind of in these photos the final pourings of concrete. Move forward a couple slides, please. Next one, please. Here you can see this is the exterior apron. So this is just outside the facility as we would connect to the railroad connection. This is a maintenance facility for rail-borne equipment. So this will actually be where those pieces of equipment enter the facility. We'll be doing track work over the next few months, tying it ultimately back to the green line in the railroad so we can get the equipment on and off our railroad. Next slide. Here is an oil water separator. It's a unique piece of equipment that allows us to filter water that comes out of our facility that may have had drainage. It's picked up anything in the facility before it goes back into the main wastewater. It's really a key piece of infrastructure on the exterior, the last piece to go in before we can do some of the restoration around the buildings and the landscaping that goes with it. Next slide. And here you can see that interior photo. I've shown you a bunch from this interior camera. You can see the last pour of concrete here in the near ground. You've seen kind of us progressively working across as they've used those areas to truck in equipment. And in the far back, you can see a little bit of that shiny aluminum steel, and that's the paint booth. So we'll try and get you some better photos in the next coming months. And so this facility is actually not only to wash all the equipment, repair all the equipment, store all the parts for it, but also allows us to paint that equipment. It takes a beating in the construction season, so a fresh coat of paint helps with that longevity. Next slide. This is our Canal-Barry Damon tie house project. This is moving forward very rapidly. We hope to see Damon fully closed up, and as we enter into winter, we can move forward, and we've actually started seeing some of the major traction power equipment coming online. So we move forward to a couple photos ahead. Next slide, please. Here we are at Damon. We got walls. It's really exciting to see the building enclosed, and over the next few months, you'll see this building fully enclosed. We'll start to get the temperature control inside. We'll start bringing in equipment. It's a big moment in this. We're hoping to have online towards the summer of next year, which will really provide some relief on the demand of power on the blue line. Next slide. We've started the upgrades of the equipment at Haymarket. So Haymarket is shared. So this equipment actually ties into our Canal Breaker House in the subway. This is the new lineup there. So this is lineup number 2. Last month I showed you some of the old equipment coming out. Here's some of that new equipment coming in. It's being commissioned and it's online now powering that facility. Next slide. And at Barry, so this is the final pieces of the foundation. So I've shown you a lot of deep foundation work, a lot of the subgrade work here recently. Here is the grade beam that follows the whole exterior. And this is where the steel and the walls come up from. So this building is starting to grow out of the ground. And so this is kind of the tailing piece of the project, but you'll be seeing some of this sprout up over the next month. Next slide. We're going to talk a little bit about our Forest Park phase 1 rebuild for the last time. So on October 8th, early in the morning, we opened up the track work after a 71-day line cut. Very excited and successful. We move forward. I'm glad to share some of the photos of some of the most beautiful track you'll ever see. This takes a village to build a track project of this caliber. And I could not say, my team went through fire and ice to get us there, but they weren't alone. They certainly had a huge amount of support from everybody, from comms down to innovation, but certainly we would not have been successful without support of transit operations, who bus bridged around this work and worked with us through test trains and other things we've commissioned on. So I'm very grateful to support that. Can we see a couple photos here? So here's functional track. You'll see it's granite, modern granite structure, wood ties, beautiful 55-mile-per-hour trackage here. This is at Loomis, which is just west of kind of Racine. Next slide. Here is what we call the Morgan Middle. So you've seen a couple photos of this sprouting up. It's a key connection point where we short-term trains to be able to facilitate service on the north side out of O'Hare and the demand up there. And so this has just come back online as well. It's a really important aspect of our use of our system and being able to provide service. Next slide. Here again is some of that beautiful track with that granite ballast. So we've made a shift with Dan Ryan to go to granite, which was a huge investment for us, but it makes a huge difference in the longevity of that track. I'm a big fan of tracks. You haven't figured that out. Next slide. And so part of the commitment on this project, we did a lot of the substructure work that will be facilitating the Racine ASAP project, which you'll start hearing reporting about in the upcoming months. We start to see some of that work going on. So they built the platform extensions for that new station house to demolish the old Racine station house. That's ultimately where the elevator will be coming down and creating an access point. So here you can see them finishing up the topping slab for that station extension that will then be handed off to our second contractor. So January, you'll start to see some of the reporting on that project. Next slide. And here's the first train. It was a beautiful night to see us restore that service. We're very proud of the work done there and very proud of the success of the project as a whole. With that, I'll pause and talk about some of the most important part of it.
Thanks, Bill. The contractor is currently attaining 26.12% DBE, which equates to over $22 million that have been paid to DBE firms so far. And we're confident that they will meet their commitment of 30%. On the workforce side, the contractor is meeting their careers opportunity and apprentice goal. They're still working to meet the service area EDA goal and completed a training for individuals interested in construction on the project site, which we reported out to the board at the beginning of the project. That was part of their good faith efforts. They ended up hiring 3 individuals from that training onto this job. Back to you, Bill.
I think one of the most interesting challenges of a project that moves this fast is really how do you create that legacy of work opportunity, right? And sometimes it is hammers on jobs, but sometimes it is creating the next workforce for the next set of projects. We talk a lot about that with Redline Extension, getting that workforce ready. Excited. As we come to the conclusion of our Refresh and Renew, a customer-facing program for the year, you'll see kind of these numbers cleaning up a little bit. Next slide, let's move forward with some of the photos. We are finishing up. We are finishing up on the last set of bus turnarounds. We have 11 and 12 of those. We have 22 of the 29 stations completed. This is Jefferson Park. What I would note here is we completed a master kind of renewal construction project in 2019. If you look at the before picture and the after pictures here, it's pretty astonishing that in a very short period of time, the use, abuse, and just loving, overall, existence of our system that we see in the weathering of the outdoor environment. You can see the worn benches in before and then the refinished after here. Next slide. This is actually out in the bus terminal right outside there. You can see kind of just the paint has had some, almost 4 years, of heavy use. So next slide. And here's kind of some updated signage. So we've taken an opportunity to kind of reprogram some of the look of the signage as well, make it a little more customer friendly as we gain feedback and continue to interact with facilities, as well as always our LED upgrades. Next slide. This is Washington Wells. So it's cosmetic exterior walk up. This is a curb appeal of that station in downtown Chicago. You really can see the refresh with the brand new signage as well as that fresh coat of paint and the upgraded lighting. Next slide. And what would be a report without a before after the LED upgrade at night? So I mean, nothing says kind of a safe, secure environment than having that really bright LED environment. So next slide. And my final report for today is on the Red Purple modernization project. We can move forward to kind of a couple of pieces of work here, a couple slides, please. Here we are looking at what Chris Purcell often talked about as the bridge under. So the first phase of the Red Purple bypass area was opening up that bypass. Chairman, when you came out and rode on that first train with us and how exciting that was. Well, over the last year or so, we've been rebuilding the structure underneath there. So we are starting to untangle kind of the existing service that was running on the last piece of the historical structure there and starting to put in service the new structure there. And we'll be building the last 2 tracks in that area. So here you can see some of that work in that corridor, what we've historically called Clark Junction. Next slide. Here is the preparation for the upcoming kind of cut and throws to be able to detangle and put us on that new structure while we've been running around it otherwise. Next slide. And here's up in the Lawrence Bryn Mawr modernization area. So we are in full drill boring mode. We have 3 drills on site. They are drilling about 140 caissons between the stations and all the new structural elements there. And so we've got 2 drills working on this on the main structure for the segmental box structure that we're coming up in the upcoming months. You'll start to see that the gantry showing up in the photos again. But here you can see those caissons being drilled. Next slide. And then we continue to demolition. So we are over 60% of the viaducts are demolished. All the viaducts are fully demolished. 60% of the embankment is completely removed at this point. We continue to work our way from north to south. It's pretty astonishing if you're out there, if you've ever experienced it beforehand, to see how amazingly open it is. And the commitment of the board to kind of be able to reopen that and activate that space. It's really paying off. You can see just that impact in day one. So next slide. As I mentioned, we're done. We've demoed all the viaducts. We've also removed the last of the historical stations. So this is the last piece of foundation being removed at Berwyn Station. Really a milestone in the project. And now we start to build from the ground up with the new modern stations, fully accessible, world-class stations. So next slide. And as always, we continue our ongoing outreach. There's a whole list of events here that we do with local organizations and the footprint of the project. weekly with the alderperson's offices, both at 44, 46, and 48, as well as a lot of the community activated organizations in that area. We're very dedicated kind of to that footprint and making sure that we're on the ground with our ears, listening to any issues that may come up, is also celebrating kind of all the great milestones we've had. It's really enjoyable to actually have community meetings here because they're seeing that progress and they see that the end of the light at the end of the tunnel there. So with that, I'll turn it over to JP.
Thanks again, Bill. The picture you see here on the slide is from our event that we hosted on October 10th. We hosted the Q4 workforce event at Gately Park, where attendees heard a presentation from CTA staff, including infrastructure, RPM, and RLE teams about CTA opportunities. They also heard from two of the unions that perform on our projects, operating engineers local 150 and sprinkler fitters local 281, both of whom had openings for their apprentice programs. So we want to get them in front of the audience so they could explain their programs and the process of how to get into those apprentice programs. We had all of our workforce partners host tables as well as some of our contractors so that participants can get information on training, resources, and current opportunities. I'm very proud to report that in September, we crossed the century mark with the number of unique DBEs on the design build contract. So far, 115 unique DBEs have been awarded over $250 million between the design and construction packages in RPM Phase 1. 51 of those firms had never done business before with CTA before RPM. I want to really thank and highlight the teams who were responsible for making that happen. The RPM team, the contractor and diversity staff who made sure to get all those opportunities out to the DBEs as they could. On the workforce side, at the end of October, 1,998 unique individuals have worked over 1.4 million labor hours and earned over $83 million in wages. Now we'd like to show you the next installment in our monthly video series in which we highlight the RPM project's ambitious workforce and DBE inclusion programs. Today, you'll hear from Eugene Sherrod, a laborer with Walsh Floor who has worked on several parts of the RPM project. It really is an honor to share these stories on how CTA and RPM have improved the lives of Chicagoans and their families. Thank you.
Seems like we may have some technical difficulties with the link.
Here we go.
My name is Eugene Sherrod. I'm a laborer for Walsh Floor. Been working on the RPM project for 4 years, and I did a lot of the temporary stations, a lot of removing the track, a lot of pouring a lot of concrete around here, a lot of demolition, just name it. I was hands-on all in there. The RPM project has helped me grow as a person, experience a lot of things, different people, different cultures, and it just helped me out a lot. Well, the project has contributed a lot to me. Hands-on training and building this great station just helped me out just so much with my family, things like that. Meeting new people, just been a good blessing to me. Well, I would like CTA to know Walsh Floor is a great investment. It's great people to have that work for them, grows people, and brings people together. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to work with Walsh Floor RPM project. I just want you guys to know, thank you, and have a blessed day.
That concludes our report. We'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions from?
Director Lee?
I have one question. Is there an opportunity? I know you're meeting with the community members a lot, older people, et cetera. Are we able to also combine that with like employment, recruitment, those sort of things? Are we already doing that, or is there an opportunity to kind of do both?
For internal positions or for the contract position?
Both.
Both. So we regularly share the information with our government and community relations group. They get it out to all the alders whenever we're having, and other electeds too, not just the alders, where we're having our workforce events. I know they share our hiring events as well. so that they can get it out to community members.
I can comment that we, recently, maybe a month ago, we did an ROE community outreach meeting, and we actually not only had our workforce partners there, we were talking about the project, but we brought human resources there, right? Because we talk about jobs coming, right? But we've got lots of need for jobs today that are good paying jobs. So.
Director Miller,
Thank you.
Director Ortiz.
And I'd second that comment. As much as we're encouraging new partners to come into our projects, helping out and encouraging, on our own HR, I think would be helpful. Thank you.
Director Ja.
No comments, thank you.
Just congratulations on the blue line. Good work there. And my brother at the board meeting, the budget meeting, there were lots of comments about our programs and our outreach in terms of diversity and hiring contractors to basically participate in CTA business. And so I want to thank you for the work that you're doing in that area. Very profound. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
There were a lot of shout outs.
Yes. We don't know if it was stacked or.
Good job. I know Melinda and them, yeah.
Our final order of business is new business. Georgette, is there any new business?
Mr. Chairman, there is no new business.
Since there's no further business to come before the board, I have a motion to adjourn the Chicago Transit meeting of November 15th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Miller, seconded by Director Ortiz. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
The motion to adjourn passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.